We're also supplying vaccines to community health centers to reach those who have been the hardest hit, and suffered the most, especially Black, Latino, Native American, and rural communities. This is really important because we believe that speed and efficiency must be matched with fairness and equity. Now, when President Harris and I took
What up, y'all? So it's officially been over 2 months since Biden's taken office on January 20th. And I thought I had to do a video because, I haven't seen many videos of people honestly reviewing Biden's presidency. And when I search for Biden presidency reviewed, I just don't get many results. So I thought I would contribute in that way. Today I'm experimenting with some new lighting. As you can see, I have 2 lights projected at me, and I know there's sort of like a double shadow appearing behind me at the moment, and honestly it's completely new territory for me, so it'll take maybe a few videos before I completely sort out my lighting. But I hope there's been some kind of improvement, or the lighting looks a little bit more professional than my previous video, and comment down below if you think the lighting is better. So yeah, I just wanted to say that first. Before I get into Biden's policies and what executive orders he's introduced, I just wanted to comment a little bit on his cabinet. First of all, let me point out that the majority of the cabinet members under Biden are white men. And this is the party that claims to be all about diversity, that the diversity is strength, it's a virtue, and yet most of your cabinet members are white men. Right, so Biden's cabinet. Jessica Hertz was a Facebook director working on the transition team for Biden. And Austin Lin and Erskine Bowles, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but anyways, they were on the agency review team and transition team, respectively. Jeff Zients was a Facebook board member before becoming Biden's COVID czar. Also, Antony Blinken had ties with Amazon and Google when he was in the private sector, and he is Biden's Secretary of State. So what does that say about Biden's cabinet so far with what I've said? It means that Biden's cabinet has deep links with big tech. And what could that mean for instance, censorship when it comes to conservatives? I think it's unlikely that we will see a revocation of Section 230 of the Telecommunications Act, which was signed into law in 1996. So yeah, I think we could speculate that we're not going to see any progress when it comes to getting rid of censorship. And it could be troubling, especially even for my YouTube channel, because chances are I'm more likely to be, to have a video taken down, or it's unlikely that I'll be able to advertise any kind of political stuff anytime soon, which is a shame because, more ads means more revenue for YouTube. So why would they be against that? And one more point about Biden's cabinet that I know of so far is that Biden's Secretary of Health, I can't read my handwriting, Javier Becerra, has zero connections to the health sector whatsoever, and he's radically pro-abortion. So what does that say about your Secretary of Health? Basically, he's incompetent, and because he has zero experience. You're not hiring a doctor, you're not hiring anyone who's been the chief of staff in some hospital or something like that. So how would he do well at his new role, And the fact that he's radically pro-abortion, it might not bother you if, you're pro-abortion or you don't believe in the pro-life stance. Not only are you taking away lives when you're pro-abortion, you're setting a precedent for regulations that could be imposed on families when it comes to what you can or cannot do. We could see more legislation that allows lax laws when it comes to abortion. And unfortunately, his assistant is the transgender former Pennsylvania Secretary of Health, Kathleen Levine. And before I give my critique on her, I will have to at least give her credit. She was a Pennsylvanian Secretary of Health, so clearly she has some experience in that sector. So in fact, I would to some extent consider replacing her as the head Secretary of Health rather than be Assistant Secretary of Health. However, she has promoted the ideas to children that hormone or aka puberty blockers are a good thing for people wanting to transition, and this is in spite of the fact that about 40% of the people who take on puberty blockers end up killing themselves. And well, I don't want my channel getting taken down, but I have to say it. If your Assistant Secretary of Health can't decide if you're a man or a woman and you have gender dysphoria, then that's kind of troubling.
Oh, you're awake. Well, your teeth are finished, and your gums should be here by the end of the week.
Where's my dick at? Where? Hey!
All right, now moving to the main topic of discussion, I want to talk about Biden's executive orders. Since taking office so far, he's put 36 executive orders in place. I looked through most of them, and there's only one that I sort of agree with. I think it's good for society. The Executive Order 14,005. Oh man, I can't read my handwriting. Ensuring the future is made in all of America by all of America's work. It seems to genuinely seek to improve various manufacturing industries, but I mean, this was Trump's whole shtick from the beginning. So it's as if he took Trump's plan and rebranded it as his own. Really disingenuous of Biden. And furthermore, another significant piece of legislation that Biden put in place was Executive Order 14,004, enabling all qualified Americans to serve the country in uniform. And what is that executive order? It's basically a reversal on Trump's transgender military ban. It's bad because if your soldiers have gender dysphoria, and not only are they more likely to kill themselves, then how is that good for the military? That's basically taking in people who have mental health issues and you're putting them on the front lines. And that's also on the top of the fact that soldiers can genuinely suffer for PTSD, or what used to be called shell shock, back around Vietnam. So now you're doubling the risk of suicide. And for what reason? Like, you're not going to make the military a better place if you put transgender soldiers there, and it's just going to make life more difficult for them. So I don't see how you're doing good for the American military. Executive Order 14,016. It's a revocation of Trump's Executive Order 13,801, which basically aimed to expand apprenticeship programs. You know, if you want to make Americans genuinely employed and seek out apprenticeship programs, it's going to look good on their resume. It's going to lead to a good career if you go through an apprenticeship. So Biden, I don't really understand why Biden revoked that. If anyone in the comments section can explain that to me below, because I've looked into it, I still have questions about that. What would be Biden's reasoning for revoking that? Like, what good does that do? And I struggle to understand that one. One of the first of Biden's executive orders since he took office was Executive Order 13,990, and it banned the Keystone Pipeline, and it also revoked Executive Order 13,766, which was basically the expediting of infrastructure projects and their approval process. So you're basically slowing down the amount of time it takes to approve a large infrastructure project, which in turn, it prevents extra economic growth. So I don't understand why you would do that. To add to that executive order on which have impacted the Keystone Pipeline, the fact that Canada is still using the Keystone Pipeline means that instead of exporting it and sending some of the oil down to the US, they're going to be exporting it abroad, probably to China. And what would that mean? That would mean they would be exporting it by cargo ship, and thus creating a lot more emissions than it would be if Americans were receiving that oil. Again, like, if the aim is to decrease emissions, which is supposedly good for combating climate change, why would you then be okay with Canada polluting more through exporting the oil? And as we all know, cargo ships aren't, green powered. And Executive Order 13988 is, in summation, what it allows. It allows men to enter women's locker rooms, and it allows women to enter men's locker rooms. And that's supposed to be good for transgender equality. However, what it's going to lead to, especially in sports teams, it's going to lead to women, or AKA men pretending to be women, winning all the women's sports competitions, as we've seen before. And so let me talk now about the cause and effect of some of these executive orders, as well as some that I haven't really mentioned because they weren't explicitly written by Biden. They were more like broad aims of Biden's administration and what they've led to. For instance, scrapping the Keystone Pipeline project and other leasing of drill sites has led to a lot of jobs being cut in the U.S. crude oil sector. And during Trump, for the first time in a while, America actually became a leading producer in crude oil, and as I think it was as well as natural gas. So you've cut a lot of jobs, and you promised that there would be a lot of clean energy jobs. However, that's just not the case. 7,000 people from Louisiana have been laid off, and they've yet to find work. And it's estimated by several different sources that 120,000 jobs could be lost because of the Keystone Pipeline and other Biden stances. And a reversal on Trump's immigration policies has led to over 100,000 border encounters, with some daily figures reaching 6,000. And although Biden initially denied and lied about there being a border crisis at the beginning, they eventually had Psaki, or I can't pronounce the director of communications name, Psaki, admitting that it is a crisis.
There have been expectations set outside of unrelated to any vaccine doses or requests for them, that they would be partners in dealing with the crisis on the border.
And let me just make a point about the Trump administration and what it did in its last month. It focused on combating coronavirus, and since then the Biden administration lied about the Trump administration's achievement with Operation Warp Speed. You have to give credit where credit's due, and the stepping stone was Trump hitting that million doses mark. Now you've exceeded that. So don't say that Trump didn't do anything, that it was a mess. That's a complete and utter lie. Since this week, there have been several mass shootings across the states. It's apparent that Biden will probably try to introduce some measures of gun control through legislation, but I'll cover that in another video, as we've yet to know what exactly the plans are. There might ban assault weapons or whatever those are, and so this is definitely a good topic for another video. I will also do a video about Jen Psaki, simply because there's so much to talk about. Like, I could compare her to the previous director of communications, and I feel like there's a lot of material I could cover there. And so more political videos to come. I also want to talk about UFC, what the future of the UFC is going to look like, as well as a few self-employment videos. So be sure to subscribe. I've got content that will appeal to most people, as I'll cover a lot of topics. So please subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and comment down below, as this will help me beat the algorithm.